main focus. So retail pays the bills, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, kind of what we're getting to here is, yeah, that kind of retail pays the bills. And it's funny, like that whole thing was so weird because I think it was like a conversation in in a group chat or whatever. And it was just kind of like, talking about that intrinsic motivation, that sacrifice that's needed. And kind of the first step of that is just a kind of like reality check, like a community-wide reality check. And it was kind of like, what do we say kind of thing? And it was just like, I'm not wearing my retail pays the bills hat, but it was just one of those things where it was just like retail pays the bills. It's so short and it's so true. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how much you slice it. We've talked about how true it is. And
it's two ways actually that they pay the bills, but we can touch on that. I'll let you finish your thought.
No. What are those two ways? I'd love to.
Well, the one way is buying HBAR, right?
Right. Yeah,
giving value to the asset, the resource that these organizations have,
right.
To raise capital. And the second thing is we talk about unsubsidized revenue. So what's the main driver of revenue in the Hedera ecosystem that's unsubsidized? Yeah. It's smart contract calls for DeFi, right? That is retail. Yep. And a lot of those, and I think that's where a lot of the revenue could come from.
Yeah.
So, they pay it twice. And I actually did catch some, I don't know if you saw it, of course you did. The booth at the last Karate Combat event.
Oh yeah.
Huge shout out first to Joe because he did so much work, but I was kind of from afar kind of helping facilitate that. It was kind of my project when it came to the HBAR Foundation. And, Brady that night, do you remember him holding up the retail pays the bills?
I remember I saw that and I was like, what's going on? Like this has just taken on a whole new meaning. It's amazing.
And some people looked at that and said, isn't that hypocritical? Because he drew a salary and he probably did pretty well. But
sure,
I saw it as a hat tip to what's obvious. Right. And I caught a fair amount of stuff about that, even though I didn't talk about that with Brady beforehand. I had no clue that he was going to do it. But when I saw it, I was like, yeah.
Right. Some people weren't fans of retail pays the bills. Right.
But I think it's the right. You have to keep that in the back of your mind. Who's paying my salary and what are their best interests? We've already touched on that. But that was telling to me that it was seen as an affront. Something that seems so just inherent to our ecosystem, something that's just a truth. So
many ecosystems, like we look at any network and it's like, when you see these Web3 ecosystems, a lot of their success is from meme coins. It's from all these different types of things. I'll bring up Charles, the president of Hedera. He said on a Spaces, I don't know if it was last year. I think it was early this year. He was asked the question of like, what are we going to see first, retail adoption or enterprise adoption? And obviously he's been at all sorts of different networks and he's had a storied career. And he said, well, you have to get retail adoption to get enterprise adoption. Like the feedback we hear from enterprise is we need more retail activity because it's enterprise that's going to leverage retail built infrastructure, not really the other way around. And we see that play out in the technology industry in general. I mean, and so that was his point. And talking about Charles and talking about this retail pays the bills things. And I want to kind of steer the conversation we've talked about where we've been, where we're at, a lot of the different problems that I think we can see as opportunities. I want to maybe like turn the corner here on like looking forward. And there was this post that Pluto from Hashpack put out that really kind of summed it up for me, similar to a little pithy line. He was like, winds of change, and that's why I called the episode this winds of change. And I think it works because it's not like we can see what's happening or necessarily see anything happening, but I think that there's this shared sense of some kind of change happening. And there's this talk of like Hedera 2.0. There's like in the meeting minutes, there's like this phase 4, like whatever it is. So I wanted to kind of throw it to you. And I know, you and I are in a really fortunate position, where we hear a lot of information, but I still can't really make sense of what's going on. And I want to kind of just hear it from you. Like, what's your, are you feeling that kind of wind of change? Are you kind of seeing those types of things, or is it not happening as quickly as we'd like to see or whatever? I'd love to just kind of get that temperature check from you. Oh, sorry. I think you're muted.
There we go. I think there's a lot of will from a lot of people
Yeah.
to, and it's a great opportunity, right? We've
Right.
had a shakeup. The ecosystem has been destabilized, and that destabilization can lead to a lot of good things. But we have to move in the right direction. And I
Sure.
think that's, again, it's just people showing good leadership. And it's not necessarily all the people in the leadership position. So, an example, if you're an employee and you're at one of these organizations, and what I've been saying resonates with you, and you think you would stay, I'm not saying people that are getting a reasonable salary, but if you think you're getting a little bit extra, or you've already gotten enough as far as HBAR, considering the things that I have said, talk to your manager, talk to the leaders in your organization and say, I think this actually makes sense. I'm actually willing to take a little bit of a step back to sacrifice and be a leader, because the leaders in these organizations might be panicked that I'm going to lose Brian, my best engineer, if I do this, if I have my employees sacrifice for the good of the ecosystem. So anybody can be a leader. I do think it's unfortunate, because I think a lot of people have been pushing for change through what you would think of as the traditional channels,
Sure.
like talking to somebody that they might know in a PM, and there wasn't change. And it's unfortunate that I think it did take, an outcrying from the community
Right.
to make change possible. And that's not the lesson, we necessarily want, because, we don't
Yeah.
want, the mob to always think that they can influence things. But that's also, what regulation might look like in the future around this. There might be
Yeah.
limitations on what the team can get. It might be things about disclosures. It might be actually giving some of these token holders voting rights on, if there is any governance structure, to influence some of those things, at least to inform those decisions. So yeah, again, going off on a tangent.
No, that's fine. No, I think that for me, I hear what you're saying. It's like, because there's so much opaqueness to what's happening behind the scenes and with the powers that be, we want to see these signals of change happening. I know we got that letter from Charles, and he did publish, like, there is now like a president's blog where he published an article about, like, what is it, like 70-40 rule or whatever it is. So there is some stuff happening, but I feel like myself, and I think many in the ecosystem, the feedback that I get is, I think it's clear that the outcry, as you kind of outlined this year, has resonated in some way with leadership, but like the call and response, like what's the signal back? What's the feedback loop? And I think that it's taken too long. I think that definitely, to be blunt, when it comes to like retaining talent in this ecosystem, Hedera is on borrowed time. Like it is alarming to hear.
Exactly. It is motivated. Yeah,
exactly. It is alarming to hear folks such as yourself, or even others that I speak to, I don't want to mention anyone specifically, but I do speak to many people that are beloved in this ecosystem that drive a ton of value into this ecosystem, that are similar to yourself, that are like, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be able to be in this ecosystem next year. I have bills to pay, and I can't just pay Hedera's.
Somebody like Milan, right? You think about him. Of course, he's an HBAR investor, but he builds some fantastic stuff, and he doesn't get overly compensated for it. If we can attract more capital into our ecosystem, we'll say, I have a pretty good pile of HBAR. Maybe I'll invest in Nomad. Those are the things that we want to kind of incentivize. And when you look, at your employees, how much better are they than the Milans of the world that don't cost you any money? And there's very good employees across these organizations, and there's very good leaders at these organizations. I mean, I
wanted to just jump on that real quick, because like I know sometimes on this show I can come across, and I think just the space that we're in right now is very, like, can be viewed as negative or nitpicking or whatever. But like, just to pull back just for a minute, it's like, when we talk about, you know, Swirlds Labs or Hashgraph or the HBAR Foundation or the Hashgraph Association, it's like, I know there's a lot of criticisms right now and they're under the gun, but there are so many good people at those organizations. So that's something that I just wanted to kind of call out. So, but yeah, we can go back to it now.
Well, I mean, Manson Lehman, you can just start at the top.
Exactly.
Rob is amazing.
Oh,
I mean, he's the best you could think of. If you want to talk about a CEO for the HBAR Foundation, he's it. The only reason, you know, I don't think it can be him is because everything that he's doing at AP Plus, I think is more important.
Yeah, he responded. Hedera. He responded to that tweet. Someone said to my tweet, they were like, "We should have Rob Allen as CEO," and he just responded like, "I'm too busy."
And he's too busy on Hedera stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, Manson Lehman, I do think that they've made some missteps. I think they followed the crypto culture, and I think a lot of that, you know, fell into overcompensation and things along those lines.
Right.
But they're really thoughtful people, and I think they can make the change. We just need to see it.
Yeah.
We do need to see these changes. And I think the employees, if they come together and make some of these sacrifices that are good for the ecosystem, and I mean, even that, some of it might be headcount reductions in certain places.
Sure.
And that's probably another thing that if I took over, there would be, you know, there would be some changes there, because I do think not recognizing that that pivot that needed to happen to supporting some native builders, I think there would need to be some changes at the top. But I think they'll end up being, most of them, much better off. I think their families will be better off. I think they will be better off. I think they'll feel better about the ecosystem, will be happier. The feedback, the attention that Hedera will get. We need to lead as an ecosystem. Hedera needs to be the shining beacon on the hill, and we can do that. But it just takes a few little tweaks, and they are tweaks. It's not big changes. And going back to why we haven't gotten that feedback, I do think, and this could be good as well, that the council moves slowly. They deliberate. They have to go through these steps.
If I had an HBAR every time I heard that.